Hello everyone, Ember here, and welcome back to a new video. In this one, I would like to take a look at Pokemon TCG deck building for beginners. Now, before we begin, I would just like to preface this video by saying this is not a comprehensive video as such. It's not going to go over every single nook and cranny when it comes to deck building. And to be honest, I don't have advice on how to make your favorite EX the best deck in format. Sadly, I don't think anyone can do that really, but this is just the advice that I would always give to new players if they were looking to get into the game and building a deck. I would also like to say as well that this video kind of assumes that you know the basics of the Pokemon TCG, like kind of like how to play, for example, with decks and things. So, just something else to bear in mind before we begin. But yeah, I would say the 5 key rules for deck building, and we'll break these down and make them more sense. The first one being try and build around a strategy, usually one type of energy. Now, that's a bit vague as a statement, but let's look at this Yanmega EX here, right? It has the ability Buzzing Boost, which can basically accelerate 3 grass energy from your deck to Yanmega if it moves from the bench to the active spot. And then Jet Cyclone does 210, and it moves 3 energy from this Pokemon to one of your bench Pokemon. Now, why I just read out Yanmega is because Yanmega is a strategy in of itself. Like, what you're trying to do here is get a Yammer on the bench, then evolve it into Yanmega, and then put Yanmega from the bench to the active, and then you can accelerate energy with Jet Cyclone to power up other attackers. So that's what we would call a strategy. It's effectively choosing one thing about like a collection, I guess, a collection of cards that you have, and saying, right, I want to really focus around this thing in particular. It's kind of hard to visualize, but like I'd say maybe think of it as like you're about to enter a tunnel. And like this is a bit of a weird example, but you're about to enter a tunnel with your favorite Pokemon, but they have to go in single file, right? They have to go in single file. It's a really narrow tunnel. You can only pick your favorite Pokemon to go through. So, like, this would also assume that all the Pokemon can go through eventually, but, it's a crap analogy, I know. But just assume that only one Pokemon can go through. It's a very narrow tunnel. So, what you're doing is effectively choosing one Pokemon to build around, effectively. Like, you are pushing that one Pokemon to the front. Also, I would say aim for one attacker, maybe two, and then support/draw Pokemon. It's draw in quotation marks because not all support Pokemon will draw you cards. Monkey Dory and Budew are famous examples of this. But usually support Pokemon will often draw you cards like Dudunsparce, for example, or Pheasantipity are pretty key. But usually aim for one or two attackers, and I'll talk more about this on the next slide. But it's mainly just because it's easier to maximize an attacker in your deck. Like, it's easier to build around one or two attackers than it is, say, 3 or 4, because then you have to run lots of different Pokemon and you have to play lots of different energy, and it can get really annoying. But also worth mentioning is that box decks usually run more than two attackers, but I wouldn't suggest playing a box deck if you're a beginner anyway. Like, you can do if you really want to, but box decks are, there's a lot going on with them, and they can be a struggle for even more experienced players as well. So, not my recommendation, really. Also, the third key rule I would say is cheating energy out into play, and Yanmega fits that bill perfectly as well as an example. So what I mean by cheating energy out into play is I don't mean literally cheating, like never do that in this game. But what I mean by that is like actually finding a way to circumnavigate the fact that you can only manually attach a single basic energy every single turn. So like one of the very basic rules that you learn in the Pokemon TCG is that you can only attach one energy from your hand during a turn. So really what you want to try and do is find a way to add more than one through, abilities, through trainers, maybe it's some weird tool card that can accelerate energy, usually through abilities, but, trainers like Crispin can be good for this. But, Yanmega is another good example because it accelerates energy to itself and then moves energy off itself to another Pokemon. So you constantly have some energy in play, at least until that second attacker gets knocked out. Then you have to use Yanmega again, or a different Yanmega. But yeah, that's what I mean by cheating energy out into play. Never cheat, but, cheat energy out into play. Also, avoid coin flips in trainers and Pokemon. Coin flips are bad because what they do is they leave a lot to chance. Now, personally, I love coin flips in the Pokemon TCG. So this is a bit of a hypocritical statement, I guess, on the fun side of things. Like, coin flips are a ton of fun to play. And to be fair, there has been one or two really good coin flip cards in the past. Cramamatic was a really good trainer card. That was great. and that was a coin flip. But typically, coin flips are just never worth it because it's a 50-50 chance. So, like, you really just want to be playing cards that do something, not actually have a chance of doing something, if that makes sense. You just always want to maximize the chances of something actually happening in your turn. So yeah, also avoid 20-20-20 splits. They do this in theme decks, not so much more now, but they used to a lot with their like single price theme decks. They used to give you 20 Pokemon, 20 trainers, and 20 energy, and they would always say, if you're a new player, do this. Do not do this. It's not worth it. The reason why it's bad though, and I'll expand on this, is because if you have 20 Pokemon in your deck, now to be fair, there is some decks, right, that play a lot of Pokemon, like 16 plus. But the thing is, if you have 20 Pokemon and 20 energy, that's when you have problems because you don't actually need 20 energy in a deck. Like the most energy I think any competitive deck is probably playing right now is about 10 to 12, and that's maybe on the extreme end as well. So like typically most meta decks won't play maybe more than 7 or 8, but it varies so much. There's no point in saying there's a definitive amount of energy you should play. But most splits roughly will look like 20 Pokemon ish, give or take, and then 30 or so trainers, and then 10 or so energy. Like the 20 energy is just way too much for a deck. Unless you're playing a weird meme deck like Kingdra or Guzzlord GX, the split just doesn't work, sadly. So yeah, the next part I want to talk about is maximizing the strategy. So after choosing a Pokemon you want to build around, you will need a thick line of it, usually with a stage 2 deck. This would mean, so for example with Charizard, it's 3 Charmander, 2 Charmeleon, and 3 Charizard. And this is to make sure you find the main Pokemon quickly in the deck. And if you prize one, then it doesn't stop the deck from working. So say you're playing like a fire type toolbox deck and you really want to play Charizard in your deck. Now what I see a lot of new players do is they'll run like 2 Charmander, no Charmeleon, or maybe 1 Charmeleon, and then a single copy of Charizard, or maybe 2 copies of Charizard. And the thing is, for a competitive list, running that is sometimes okay if their deck is very consistent, but typically, when you're just starting out, especially, if you were to prize any of those Pokemon, it'd be really annoying to actually get a Charizard set up. And then on top of that, because you're spending so many resources trying to get that Pokemon set up, you're not then setting up other Pokemon that you need as well. So, like, the reason why all these competitive lists play 3 Charmander, 2 Charmeleon, 3 Charizard, again, just as an example, but like do this is because otherwise things get really awkward when you just start discarding Pokemon and prizing them as well. So it's just really annoying. Typically, you'll never need a 4-4-4 line, so you don't actually have to quote unquote maximize them because you do want actual space in the deck for other Pokemon to support as well as useful trainers. So no, typically you don't want 4 Charmander, 4 Charmeleon, and 4 Charizard, especially not Charmeleon. The middle evolution is probably the least important. Even with a TM evolution out in the format, like Rare Candy is just usually a way better option. So yeah, you still want the space in the deck. Also, with some useful Pokemon recovery like Super Rod, it also means that you'll never need to play 4 of a main attacker. So, I would always say, like, play your Super Rods, your Night Stretchers, your Alonazade over playing 4 of your main attacker, basically. With the exception, and again, there's loads of exceptions in this video, and that's why it's not a comprehensive guide. But, for example, Iron Thorns. They only have 1 attacker really in that deck. You play 4 Iron Thorns, and that's it. So, like in a quad deck, for example, you'd play 4 of the main attacker. But that's just an example. And then next up is Netdecking. Now, I know this is not what a lot of new players like to hear, but this really is the quickest path to winning games and just enjoying the most out of the TCG. Now, for me personally, I played through nearly the entirety of the XY era without Netdecking. I played my own jumbled pile of cards. It was a lot of fun, and that's why I say at the bottom here is, above all though, have fun. And I did enjoy it, even though I lost many, many games and I never won any like local league challenges or anything. I just had fun. I did lose an awful lot though. And I would definitely say that if you net deck, you're just on a much quicker path to actually getting to the point where you can build better decks yourself as well and not have to net deck. So it kind of goes full circle in a way. So yeah, net decking is literally just copying an existing deck. You can do meta, but would recommend a rogue or budget deck first. Rogue or budget decks are more forgiving with losses and are usually a lot cheaper. Now, what I mean by forgiving with losses is that basically with a meta deck, there's this massive expectation that you're going to win a lot, right? Because it's a meta deck, right? But rogue or budget decks are rogue or budget for a reason. If they were great, they would be meta. But because they're rogue or budget, they're going to lose eventually. Like, they're not going to win every single game. Like, I see crazy thumbnails on YouTube saying this new single prize Pokemon is insane or broken or whatever, But the thing is, the harsh reality is, you're not going to win most games. Like, you're going to win a decent amount and have fun with that deck, but you're not going to win all of them. And I think that's why it's more forgiving with Rogue Budget, because there is an expectation with it. As well as this, however, most meta decks from tournaments are designed to be played optimally by the creator with text for a competitive setting. So, like, this is not always the case. Like, you can pick up lists from, like, I'll mention this at the end of the video as well, but like Azul GG, for example, does really good lists that aren't necessarily designed for a tournament, but are very well optimized for just casual play as well. But yeah, like, sometimes players will create a deck that has like certain tech cards that are designed for certain matchups, and that's all well and great for an event, but for like the TCG Live ladder or your local league, there's no telling what you'll run into. So, just food for thought, really. And again, above all though, have fun. So I would like to give an example of an unfocused list, because we've talked about like maximizing your strategy. So I figured I may as well go over an unfocused list. Now, this one was the one that was given by TCG Live, and to be honest, it's honestly not the worst 60 cards that I've ever seen. Like, I think you could do way worse as a starter deck than this particular list, but it is unfocused. Now, if you want to pause the video and work out why it's unfocused, then yeah, that's absolutely fine. But 3, 2, 1, and we'll look at a focused Ho-Oh list. So, like, why is this focused? Well, there's no Typhlosion anymore, and there's no Ethan's Adventure. And before you go, well, surely Ethan's Adventure is great in this deck because it finds your Pokemon and it finds your energy, which is true. That's great. But the thing is, Typhlosion was a very thin line in the deck. It was a 3-2-2 line, and you also had 3 copies of Ho-Oh. Now, when we mentioned cheating out energy, what I should have said is that you don't really need to cheat out energy if you only have 1 energy in your attack cost. This was my mistake in recording this video. But Ethan's Typhlosion only needs a single energy to attack. So even though it's a pretty solid single prize attacker, why it's not good in here is because Ho-Oh accelerates 2 energy. Like, there's literally not enough synergy between them. Even though it seems like a really good idea, the reason why you never really see them paired together, especially not in a competitive setting, is because they don't synergize well enough with energy. So Ho-Oh can charge up to itself, and it also means we can play a 3-2 line of Slugma Macargo. Now, admittedly, the previous list was running a 3-3 line, so it technically was actually thicker in this one. But this does mean that without Typhlosion, we can also run additional trainers and additional Pokemon, like Latias EX, which will give Slugma and Latias itself, but also Ho-Oh, Free Retreat. And then you've got like Mew EX with Restart and Pheasantipity. Like, these were Pokemon that were already in like the original list anyway. But you can play additional Pokemon if you want. You also get to play more trainers like Penny, which is great. Also bumped up the counts of Earthen Vessel because the strategy is more focused on like trying to get like energy on Ho-Oh to attack turn 1 going second. Because if you look at this list, there's 4 Superior Energy Retrieval, 2 Earthen Vessel, and a ton of Fire Energy, which were supposed to be there, but they didn't come in the image for some reason. Like, there's not enough focus on one particular thing. And there's also like a Max Rod to retrieve energy. On top of like having 4 Superior Energy Retrieval, it's overkill at that point. You don't need it. So having this is more of like a focus strategy, if that makes sense. And like Precious Trolley is another good example here, because it can just search your deck for any number of basics that you want and slap them onto your bench. But what if you want to build around Typhlosion? Well, this is an example of a focused Typhlosion list. So again, very few Pokemon, only playing a 4-4-3 line of Typhlosion, which I suppose that's a thick line, right? But also playing Pheasantipity, Budew, Shaman, and then a whole load of trainers. A lot of trainers. And this, of course, is more focused around attacking with Typhlosion as the main attacker, recycling Typhlosion, getting them set up, and all the rest of it. So this was an example of a focused Typhlosion. I do want to have a look at one more list here. A focused list of Garchomp by Fabian Pujol. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. But this was a 60th place list from a little while back. And why this is a focus list, and like, you sometimes see Garchomp lists online that play really weird fighting type Pokemon. But the reason why this works as a focus deck is because it's exclusively built around Garchomp. We're playing 4 Gibble, 4 Gabite, 3 Garchomp, and a 2-2 line of Roserade, not just a 1-1 line, a proper 2-2 line, so we can get it consistently set up. Also got some key support Pokemon like Monkey Dory and Budew. And then technically Spiritom's a support Pokemon, but it's also like a secondary attacker within the deck, which is quite nice to have. And then literally the rest of the deck is pretty much just trainers, like only 9 energy in this deck. So you run things like Luminous, which will essentially provide you with a choice of attaching it to Garchomp or Munkidori to trigger Munkidori's ability. So this is another example of a more focused list. Also, this is something that I really want to touch on this video because I see a lot of new players using Draw 3 supporters. Why not Draw 3? So the reason why you don't play Nemona is most supporters will let you see more cards, such as Iono here, or Research. So, shuffle draw 6, discard draw 7. That's all well, it's great. However, Arven, for example, only gets 2 cards for deck, but Arven lets you choose which 2. Nemona is pure chance. So Arven is just a really good supporter in the game, in case you weren't aware of it. But why Arven is so much better is you're effectively choosing what you get out of the deck. Nemona leaves everything to chance. Like Iono and Research, yeah, they leave everything to chance as well. But you're seeing more cards. Nemona, you're basically doing risks by only drawing 3 cards, so you have no idea what those cards are. Like if you played like a code breaker during your last turn, like you search your deck for 2 cards, put them on top of your deck, and then you Nemona, that's like the only way of guaranteeing like what you're drawing effectively. But yeah, draw Pokemon can also help add more cards to your hand directly if you don't want to play a shuffle, draw, supporter, or discard effect. So like maybe you have like a Charizard in hand. Like typically it's probably better to just shuffle or discard the Charizard even and try and get like a rare candy Charizard or like get a TM evolution for Charmeleon. But like typically there is draw Pokemon like Dunsparce and Pidgeot, for example, or even Festivity, if you actually want a chance at drawing things like rare candy and stuff. Like just don't do the draw 3. It's not worth it, I promise you. But yeah, here are just some useful channels that I thought I would shout out. These are just ones to help you get into the game in a bigger way. Azul GG is like competitive new decks. Does a lot of content, not really my kind of style, but I do appreciate his work. And again, he's a really good player as well. He's one of the better players that also does YouTube videos, so something worth bearing in mind. Omnipoke gets a special shout out. Again, competitive, goes over new card reveals, does like tier lists and things. Very chill vibes. Love to watch it. Celio's Network, again, a bit more of an infrequent poster, I would say, Celio's Network. But again, no reduction in quality whatsoever. Good tier lists, deck lists, best decks. Again, another great competitive resource. Pokemon TCG Radio mainly does like news, new card reveals. I think he used to do like tournament results really, but I think he's moved away from all that kind of shabam and mainly just focuses on like new card reveals and news in general. So, or for all your latest news, basically go to him. Also, for Little Dark Fury, Rogue, Budget, and also more content. Like Little Dark Fury became a jack of all trades one day, so like he has loads of content across different things. But yeah, Rogue and Budget are his like speciality. And then for the Win TCG, I would say is also Rogue and Budget, just like LDF, but also does like some more like creative challenges and creative deck ideas. So if you're interested in the more flavorsome side and the more casual side of the hobby, I would definitely recommend his channel. And then trust your pilot for TCG Live news, updates, and rogue decks. And then I guess Ember Power, but I'd probably check out these other channels before you check out my channel. But yeah, just some useful channels to go over. But yeah, some final thoughts. It's not easy when you first start. Like, I'm not going to pretend like it is. Losing games is fine. It's just part of the process. Everyone loses games. There is zero shame in net decking as well. Like, don't feel like it's something you have to fall back on. It's just a useful way, and it is a resource there for you to exploit, really. And above all, having fun is the priority. We play the game to enjoy it. Like, there's no point in playing this game if you don't have fun. Like, I would have quit a long time ago if I didn't have fun. So, yeah, above all, have fun. That is the priority. But yeah, let me know what you think down below. What do you think about this video? And yeah, thank you for watching.